Slow internet speeds, overly expensive bills for internet, and unaccommodated teleco operators have become common dinner table conversation for most consumers today. Our cover story this week talks about exactly this issue. We have with us on Outlook Filter today Arindam Mukherjee, who has done deep research on this subject to talk about what exactly the problem is and who is to blame for it. Hello Arindam, welcome to Outlook Filter.
Hi.
So let's start with how bad the situation is at the present moment.
The situation is quite bad because throughout, if you look at customers, they have been complaining of bad connections, inconsistent lines and overbilling. The primary complaint is that the connection is very slow and the data limits finish too soon. There is also the issue that in India we have an overwhelming majority of internet users are on the mobile. I mean 330 million out of 350 million are on mobile, whereas only 20 million are on fixed lines. And mobile sector cannot give the kind of speeds or the consistency that a fixed line or a cable gives. So that is the root of the problem.
Some of the common complaints that consumers usually have is data limits expiring too soon, speeds which are too slow, overbilling and all of that. So where do you see what is wrong and what is right, and what should be complained about and what shouldn't be?
No, it's not a question of right or wrong. It's a question of what the problem is. And as stated earlier also, slow speeds are one of the most common complaints that people face in India and people complain about. I mean, as compared, people have access to the speeds in other countries, so people know the difference. Earlier, we were in dial-up and no one complained because we didn't know what kind of speeds were there in other countries. Now we do. So when we do a state comparison, our speeds are far slower than what is available in even smaller countries like Bangladesh or Pakistan. So that's, I mean, one of the reasons is very high speeds, very high number of subscribers in India. The second complaint is really data limits running off, and that is where the companies come in. Also, one of the reasons here is due to the pattern of usage, and normally people have Wi-Fi connections and many devices are attached to the same connection, so it wears out fast. Then there are apps working in the background which eat up data, it keeps on downloading data. So these are some of the problems that are there. Then of course there is the issue of absolutely opaque billing by the companies, which is not transparent, and we really don't know what are we being charged for and how much we are being charged for. And of course rates are quite high at times.
So who is to be blamed in this situation, and what are government bodies such as the TRAI and the government itself doing to solve and ratify these problems?
See, the blame, obviously, a large part of the blame would lie on the telcos, the companies which are providing the service, because they haven't made things easier by being non-transparent as far as the billing is concerned. You don't know where your data limit is going. So those things the consumer is totally oblivious of. They don't know what is happening at that end. They just have to pay without knowing what is happening. The second area to blame is the government strategy. As you rightly said, the government and the TRAI. The TRAI has been suggesting that cable sector should be allowed to provide internet on cable. And we have 100 million cable homes in India. If the cable TV sector were to provide internet, and cable TV internet is very fast internet, and if that were to come into the internet sector, a large part of our internet woes would be solved. Now that is not happening, and TRAI says that it is suggested to the government twice to allow cable TV to provide internet. But the government is not acting on it swiftly. It is sitting over it, and it is yet to take a decision on it. Now there are issues about the 7% AGR that is shared between the government and the ISPs at this point of time, and cable TV operators do not have an ISP license, so they have to take an ISP license. They do not declare their subscribers. So all those issues are coming into the government mind, which is why it's slow on this. The other aspect is really why the telcos are putting so many subscribers on every megahertz of spectrum, which is making the internet so slow in India. They are not investing in infrastructure. If they spend on infrastructure, if they take more spectrum, they can distribute the load over various megahertz of spectrum that they hold, but they are not doing that. And that is one of the reasons that the internet is so slow. And we have to remember, as I said earlier, that out of 350 million, 330 million people are on mobile internet, and mobile internet cannot take the kind of the load. So somewhere around the companies, the government and TRI of course is doing its job, but the government and the telcos are to blame for this.
So as you said, there are so many problems the consumer faces today. What is the redressal mechanism set up by the government or other bodies to address such complaints?
Unfortunately, there are very few redressal mechanisms here, and there was a ruling by Justice Kajju which said that telecom complaints are not maintainable under the Consumer Protection Act.
Okay.
So it cannot go to courts. Now, because of this, no one complained. And thankfully, in November 2015, this has been overruled, and a new ruling says that these complaints are maintainable in courts and can go to courts. They can be maintainable under the Consumer Protection Act. So now there is a way out for people to go and complain. But the problem is that who goes to complain? Who files a case? Because one, it's time taking. Second, it's expensive. It's to go for litigation. So very few people actually go for litigation in such cases. So in most cases, some people would go to the consumer forum whose orders are not binding. So the matter stays there. But now hopefully, as people know more about the new ruling, the November ruling, people will go for litigation.
Much has been said about 4G's introduction in India. Do you personally think that 4G will change the game in mobile internet here?
Yes, initially it should, because 4G is promising very high speeds. I mean, we are talking about speeds upwards of 8 Mbps to 10 Mbps, even more. So speeds should come, but that is initially. We have to remember that 4G is also mobile.
Okay.
And mobile is dependent on spectrum. So there will be a spectrum limitation at some point of time. As we get more people onto the 4G platform, there will be sort of pressures on the spectrum, and connections will get slow. The second thing is 4G at this moment is very expensive, and that will deter people from going in for 4G. I mean, already 4G is in the country and in most of the circles. I mean, Airtel is offering it, Vodafone is offering it. I mean, the Airtel is advertising that it's available everywhere. But how many people have actually shifted to 4G? It's just a handful, because still 4G is very expensive. So 4G will solve problems initially, but later on it might be the same situation as more people get into that. There is one caveat to this. Now, Reliance Jio is coming in with 4G services, and Reliance Jio promises to give very high speeds at very low price points, very low device cost. So if that actually happens, and when it happens, and if it happens, it might be a different, there might be a different paradigm in this. But we'll have to wait and watch what Reliance does once it comes in. But as of now, 4G is good as long as it doesn't get too many subscribers.
Thank you, Arindam, for joining us on Outlook Filter. This is Arushi Bedi.